Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. Her name is Maria Escobar. Mrs. Maria, how are you doing, ma?
Very good, very good. And you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Mrs. Maria. And also, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. Firstly, you are a consultant. You are also a speaker as well. Can you please, Mrs. Maria, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mrs. Maria?
As someone that is highly passionate and curious about human development, and I have been investing my years of experience in consulting. I started my career in consulting for pharmaceutical companies. Then I moved to the client side to pharma, but I have always had that consulting mindset in me. So 10 years ago, I decided to go independent as a consultant, and now I'm part of a team called P31 Consulting.
Very much beautiful in regards to every single thing that you've actually tried to build from the side of the clinical, if I'm right, down to the point where you're now doing it personally to people as a consultant as well. And also, I would like to drive to the book. You also publish your book as well, The Business Catalyst. Can you please, Mrs. Maria, discuss more on the book? And do you also plan to write more books in the coming future, Mrs. Maria?
Thank you. So our book is going to be launched in June 2nd. And we have written, together with two colleagues, we have written this book because when we interact with professionals, we have seen that many people are experts in their field, but they get to a point in their organization where they are asked for solutions, but they are not invited into the decision table. So we started understanding what were the skills required to get to that point, to get to the point of being identified as a strategic partner. We consolidated those skills into this playbook that we call Business Catalyst. And definitely it's for someone that is looking to advance in their career, that they feel a little bit stagnated, that they know they have a lot of potential and a lot of value to add to the organization, and how they can start to increase that influence within their team initially and the whole organization at the end.
It's very much beautiful because it is absolutely not easy to do a lot of work, make a lot of impacts, and not even call to the table to actually make one or two decisions. And that also gives us the point of shift for us to understand better how we can actually generate that sense of influence. And that is why I would also like to drive to the point where many professionals are respected for doing excellent work. Yet they are not always invited, as we said earlier, into
Mhm.
the room where key decisions are made. What do you think those goals that gap, or why do you think that gap happened? And what does it reveal about how organizations define value, Mrs. Maria?
Well, that's a great question. And actually, it's a real pain for many professionals out there. And I think there's a gap between the two things that are valued in an organization. You're valued because of your competence or your knowledge, right? And you're also valued because of your strategic relevance. So most of us in our career, we start our career trying to gather as much knowledge as we can and becoming experts in our field in order to be that subject matter expert that everyone goes to when they have a question regarding that specific topic. So we spend a lot of our career getting that knowledge, getting that experience, but there's a point where that experience is not going to take you to the strategic decisions, that the set of skills that are required for someone to be able to understand the strategy of the organization, to understand the environment, the 360 of what is happening in the situation, and be able to influence that into change. So those are two different things. And normally we focus on the first one, that is more like knowledge based, than on strategy base. And I think that's the gap, and that's why many people have trouble jumping into the other side of being a strategic partner.
Exactly, it's definitely not easy, but to gain that knowledge, as you said earlier, to actually understand better, because as you said, when someone wants to begin probably a job or a career, is to gather those sense of knowledge and every single thing that also follows as well, which also reveal a lot of value within an organization and also other things that can also help make these decisions despite the fact that we are actually not in the position whereby the decisions are being made as well. But I would just like to drive so that we could get more exploration and also understand better the strategic partner pyramid because you introduced that as well. From answering questions accurately to provide new thinking. How can a professional recognize where they currently stand on that pyramid, Mrs. Maria?
That's a great question. So there's three levels that we call of operating within a company or within your role. The first one is called answering questions, and that's the base of the pyramid. Basically, that's where people go to when you are an expert in your field. So they go to you with a question and you answer the question and you answer the request and you solve that particular there you or sorry of operating within the organization or within your role that's a little bit of understanding the problem. So before solving or answering the problem, you're going to understand the situation. So you start using other skills there. You start using questioning skills. You start using your curiosity, your influence, your 360 view of the organization to try to understand better what is happening, and might help them reframe the question to the real issue that is happening in the organization. So that's another level of operating. And then the final level of operation is where you provoke new thinking. So you don't only do answer questions or ask questions to understand better the situation, but you actually provoke new thinking within the organization. So you change frameworks, you change ways of operating. So all of us can operate in different levels at different times in the organization, and we are not suggesting that a strategic partner should always be provoking things. So a strategic partner sometimes has to answer questions only. The problem is that you stay there in the base answering questions only all the time without provoking new thinking sometimes, right? So having the skills necessary and understanding when you need to go to the top of the pyramid and when you have to operate in provoking new thinking is a critical step for you in order to become a strategic partner. And you can view how people sorry, you can understand how people view you. You can identify how people see you or where people are expecting you to operate. If they are only asking questions and expecting you to solve them immediately, they are thinking that you operate only in answering questions. But if you are asked to sit down and to think about things and to brainstorm and to give ideas, you might be operating in other levels of the pyramid. So, our book helps people or professionals move from just answering those questions to how they can start being perceived as someone that can understand the situation and someone that can provoke new thinking.
Very much important, and that's what also give us the position for us to be more recognized and for us to be in the position whereby they see us more better and they also see us as a very much important ally in the organization as well. We do understand that questions will always come in, but we have to know how we can
Exactly.
also try our best to generate those questions and also see how we can provide that sense of influence and how to also brainstorm, as you've said, how we can sit down and actually think on key areas that solution can also be made. And also, Mrs. Maria, I would like to drive to the point of relationship
Mm-hmm.
value skills focus on turning individual mastery into external impacts. How do you think professionals can build stronger trust and influence without feeling like they are forcing themselves into politics or self promotion, Mrs. Maria?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think it's something that we normally mistake. And is that when we build influence, we are not self promoting ourselves. So we need to understand that we need to stop trying to be seen and start trying to be useful for people. So when you change your mindset to, oh, you just don't you don't need to seek visibility, but what you need to seek is how you can add value to the conversation. So it's a lot not about having the right answers, but having the right questions for the conversation. Is trust, there's a lot of items or components in trust, and in our book we have a formula that was formulated by someone else, but that we use very often to help ourselves understand how we can increase that trust in our stakeholders and how we can start to build that influence in our stakeholders. And one of the things that we say there is that you have to be less self-oriented and more oriented towards others. And when you have that in mind, you definitely start to look more trusting for the people that you're having the conversation, but also start to have that right to ask questions to that person and also have the right to then provoke that new thinking, and that's what builds influence. So what we are teaching people here is you don't have to be visible in order to have trust and influence. What you need to be doing is build that position in the company where people say, you know what, I want to have the conversation with them because every time that I have a conversation with them, I'm thinking better. It's not that I'm having new thought, like I don't learn maybe something new from them, but I'm always thinking better when I have a conversation with them.
To be honest, it is a very strategic career, to be honest with you, because we are being brought to the table. We must not be in the position whereby we are being too seen or being too influential, but we want to be in the position whereby we are actually adding values. We are actually making people to think. We are actually making people to actually understand better and also see how they can also play a very huge role for the growth of the organization. So we're not coming in to just feel like we want to gain the sense of influence. We're actually being there to actually build that sense of questions, to build that sense of where one can actually think better and also give some potential solutions that can also be of an idea for the growth of the organization. And that actually makes
Right.
one to be really seen. It gives the very huge reflection that can help one to grow and also become more impacted in the organization. Also, I would like to drive to the point of the strategic thinking, which was described as the final layer. What separates someone who simply provide good answers from someone who helps leaders think differently about the problem itself, Mrs. Maria?
Yeah, so I would say that having a strategic mindset requires a very systemic thinking process. So you need to understand much more than just your role. And we always say that organizational skills start with curiosity. So you need to start being very curious about what is happening in other parts of your organization and very curious about what is happening in other parts of your industry and in other markets. So having the ability to integrate all of that different divergent thinking into something that is useful for your team is where the value starts to grow. So you have to start thinking about your only siloed part of the organization and thinking how can I know and how can I understand much better that. And strategic thinking is also about the longer term. So okay, let's think that someone is asking me to do a project on this issue, but they might be only thinking about the shorter term. If you start to think, okay, what would happen if we do this for the long run? Is there an implication there? And if you're able to have that conversation with them, saying, okay, I understand the benefits in the short term doing this, But let's think about the longer term, or let's think about what happens, the impact this project has in another part of the organization. And that's where you start to provoke new thinking, because people will say, you know what, you're actually right. It might destroy this part of the value in our organization, or in the future it might cause this risk. You know what, why don't we reframe the need? Why don't we reframe what is happening? And that's what strategic thinking does to the organization, is that it allows for better solutions because it understands better the problems, and it reframes the issues and the questions that we have.
Thank you so much for the great insight, Mrs. Maria. Now we know that it is not about we being there, it's about we actually adding values. It's about we actually making the huge impact. It's not about we being influential, but it's about we actually putting things into the table that can actually make people actually think and also see themselves as one of a whole that can also be of impact in the organization. And also, as you've said, the strategic thinking also give us a point to actually give the sense of thinking, which also lies as the final layer, and also giving ourselves a sense of understanding better. And for us to understand better, we have to be very calm enough to actually pick one or two things to actually bring to the table. I would just lastly like to ask for listeners who often feel overlooked, underused, or brought into probably the organization or the meeting too late. What practical step can help them move from being a reliable contributor to becoming a true strategic partner, Mrs. Maria?
Well, I would say there are three things that you can do in order to start your journey towards a strategic partner or a business catalyst, as we call it. So the first one is have clarity on yourself. And that's why we start the book with individual skills, because you need to start to think what are your priorities, what are your goals, and what are your values, and how you can be honest about that with yourself. So I think that one is the first thing that you need to have. And many of us do not ask those questions to ourselves. But that's the basis, that's the foundation for anyone that wants to have this as a sustainable career in their personal development. Then the second thing is you have to be more curious. So challenge yourself in the next conversation to ask more questions and listen more instead of providing answers. So step back. Whenever someone is asking you to answer something, step back and ask another question to that person to know a little bit more, not to slow down the process, but to know a little bit more about why they are coming from, where they are coming from. So that's the second step. And I would say the third step that I would challenge you, and you can do it even this week or the next week, is go and find someone else in the organization that has a different function from you and that you have never talked to, and invite them for to lunch or for a coffee or whatever you want, and have a conversation. Be curious about what they do. What is it that they bring to the organization? What is their role, their function? What is all about them? And start to like to think about how you can collaborate with them, how you can start to align with them, and how your work impacts their work as well, and how their work impacts your work. So you start to have a more systemic view of your organization.
Sincerely, I appreciate the great insights, Mrs. Maria, from our personal questions to give ourselves the right question for us to know the right area we should actually find ourselves, to also build ourselves in the point of adding values, and also make people who are actually we do not make more relationship with to sit them down and actually develop the sense of collaboration. These areas are one of the biggest tools for us to develop ourselves and for us to be seen in the right way, in a positive way, and also provide impact on the society at large. And also, Mrs. Maria, there is a question I normally ask during the end of the show. From our forefathers, from our ancestors, there are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mrs. Maria, what do you think that thing will be, Mrs. Maria?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say for me, it's more about what we're losing and not what we don't have anymore, but what we're losing and that human touch. I think we're losing that human touch, and I would like to bring it back. I feel, for instance, now that I'm interacting in LinkedIn, sometimes I feel there is an AI that wrote the post and then an AI that is replying with a comment. And there's like no human interaction there and no value interchange, just like AIs talking to each other. So I wish we can really maintain that human connection, and of course use all of the AI that we need and every all of the technologies that we have developed. They are fantastic, but that human connection is so important.
Completely agree. Human connection is very much important in our time because that gives us the source of genuine, and also that also comes from nature as well. I do know we want to try our best to make everything actually perfect in terms of message and also everything like that. But doing things naturally also help. And we do hope that we heal down to that perspective where there are more human parts of connection despite the huge technology and the artificial intelligence, which are really, really smart to do a lot of things out there. Mrs. Maria, I
Right.
also want to use this opportunity to thank you for the time and the opportunity for us to have this profound and insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Mrs. Maria.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation.
All right, have a wonderful day, Mrs. Maria. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.